Welcome to Section 7, Parallel Parenting. When parents are unable to parent jointly due to high conflict, parallel parenting is an option. In this manner, both parents parent the children independently when the children are in their care. This type of plan is very different from a co-parenting plan, where the parents work together on most issues to parent their children jointly. Let's look at an example. Mike and Michelle. Mike and Michelle argue whenever one calls the other to talk with their children, especially when it is not convenient for the other parent. Now that the parents have a new parenting plan, a parallel parenting plan, they do not speak with each other except during those times specified in the parallel parenting plan, such as during emergencies or when making major decisions. Other than emergencies, Mike and Michelle now know when to expect a call from the other parent, so they can prepare themselves. Often with parallel parenting plans, children speak less often with the other parent than they would with a typical shared parenting plan. When children do call the other parent, the parent where the children are staying is not involved in the communication in any way unless the children are very young. These specifications help define the boundaries regarding the parents' interactions and communications, and thus the relationship is made more formal and privacy is respected. And with these parents, I often, even though with regular co-parenting, if they can't be friends, I recommend a business type relationship, but definitely with parallel parenting, it's all about business. So it's a business type of relationship. Creating a parallel parenting plan is a plan with specific and more stringently negotiated boundaries that protect the parents from each other and protect the children from the parents' conflict. Both the co-parenting plan and a parallel parenting plan possess negotiated boundaries that are written, or typed, of course. The document can be prepared by a mediator or by your lawyers. Sometimes parents even create it themselves. Most often in high conflict situations, it becomes a court order. Sometimes there needs to be an additional order or another document if the court order does not address all the negotiated boundaries. Most parents do have a co-parenting plan that is written as part of their divorce settlement. Many parents, despite having a co-parenting plan, do not follow it exactly and make adjustments on their own, adapting their lives to the plan and adapting the plan to their lives as best they can, since certainly it's hard to follow a parenting plan exactly as kids start developing and activities change. However, there are some parents that require a co-parenting plan which they follow nearly absolutely due to higher than moderate to severe levels of conflict without exact guidelines. So these families need a written, structured plan to follow. And there are a few families, however, that due to high levels of conflict, that need a parallel parenting plan that is even more highly structured. Goals of parallel parenting plans. So the purpose of any parenting plan is to help parents to disengage from each other in order to reduce the opportunities for conflict. Parenting plan should always include the following to do just that. Provide for the physical needs, safety, and care for the children. Provide for safety of both parents. They must be detailed and structured. They need to outline specific day-to-day functions of the parents and children, including visitation over holiday schedules. They need to clearly state each parent's responsibilities and decision-making power. They need to clearly specify when and how parents will communicate with each other and with the children when they are with the other parent. They need to detail when and how transitions will occur between parents and specify how disputes will be resolved. You do not accept or assume flexibility until conflict is lessened. It's very important. Be aware that flexibility is often the breeding ground for old and new conflicts. So again, remember, you had trouble negotiating and bending with your partner because maybe your former partner, because maybe you felt like you were taken advantage of, and here we're doing it again in a different type of setting, post-relationship. And then be prepared that parenting plans are often static documents and don't account for developing lives and new activities. It's important to anticipate children's changing interests and activities. But again, be aware that a parenting plan made for a 5-year-old with 30-year-old parents will not fit well later with a 15-year-old and 40-year-old parents. So you really need to be thinking ahead when you're creating a parenting plan, and even within the parenting plan you can talk about potential changes or meeting again to develop a new parenting plan at some stated time. Researchers do estimate that half to 2/3 of all divorcing families experience some level of violence around the time of separation, and preventing further violence while allowing communication in a safe way is essential. Often communication is not preferred, but it's still important to ensure information is passed while keeping conflict away from kids and allowing them to grow. So often, when we're speaking of communication, often verbal communication is not preferred. So there's got to be some other ways to manage communication, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, different options that you have. Alert, alert. Becoming effective co-parents is one of the primary goals after separation or divorce in order to support and facilitate your children's adjustment. Remember, co-parenting is when parents communicate and work with one another to raise their children in a cooperative manner. Co-parenting is difficult and, if not impossible, when parents are in a high conflict situation and are critical of each other's parenting. Those angry interactions make cooperation difficult to impossible. Research does show that children are better off when parents have less conflict. Despite parents learning this and hearing this over and over again and reading about it over and over again, they often continue to place the children in the middle of conflict. Parallel parenting is comparable to parallel play in young children, where children play next to the other and play with the same or similar toys, yet they have little or no direct interaction with each other. Parallel parenting means that each parent deals with the children during their time with them without the interference from the other parent. The purpose of parallel parenting is to reduce your level of conflict and ensure that each parent is acting effectively in parenting tasks. Parents develop separate routines when the children is with each parent. Communication only occurs during specific circumstances and using formal procedures, thereby reducing opportunities for conflict. A common myth is that children cannot adapt to having different rules and circumstances at each parent's house. This is not true. Most children adapt well and can often benefit from having different home lives. Think about the rules at school versus the rules at home. Kids know what the rules are. They know that those rules are different and they adapt. And children have to learn how to discriminate between different settings and understand that they have to behave different ways in different places. This helps them in the future with life. There are some challenges with parallel parenting plans. So for example, when children are under the age of 3, they need more consistency and coordination. So parents are going to have to communicate, but there's got to be other methods rather than verbal. And when children have activities where their belongings must be carried between homes. So what I often hear about are usually about sites, about soccer cleats, or it's about football or lacrosse equipment or dance equipment that has to go back and forth between homes. And often parents end up buying their own equipment, and it can be very costly for certain families. So the goal is to not have to have separate equipment in each home, of course. And then finally, the plan will include how to make the above occur without conflict. With a parallel parenting plan, your child receives the benefits from separate homes from each of you, and you have a better chance of disengaging from the other parent and then reducing the conflict to which your child is exposed. So let's compare the difference between the traditional co-parenting plan and a parallel parenting plan. Certainly the ideal, of course, is to have a co-parenting plan. But if you're steeped in high levels of conflict again, you may consider creating a parallel parenting plan with the other party and with the assistance again of a third party. So with a co-parenting plan, you have flexibility in a parenting schedule, but in a parallel parenting, there's a specific schedule with few exceptions. So the plan is not to make changes. So in co-parenting, there's a flexibility in boundaries, right? You both want to try to work together, potentially spend some holidays together, birthdays together, things of that nature. And there's also an expectation that you can call at any time to relay information. With parallel parenting, there's clear communication and a permanent transition or exchange with the kids. So it's outlined how we're going to communicate with each other. It's outlined where we're going to drop the kids off, where we're going to pick them up. And often with parallel parenting, or even in other high conflict situations, parents often rely on schools to make an exchange, so the parents don't even have to see the kids. So one drops the child off in the morning, the other one picks them up in the afternoon. And then in a co-parenting plan, there can often be informal changes to the parenting plan as needed. With parallel parenting plan, again, there are a few changes, but if changes need to be made, there's usually a formal process in doing so. In a typical co-parenting plan, it's less detailed. With parallel parenting, it's very detailed. Co-parenting, again, there's informal communication between the parents. Parallel parenting plan, there's set times to communicate, and it's very businesslike. And then it's often documented too, whether it's through email, through texts that are documented. It's usually one way of communication, or something like our family wizard or talking parents. And then co-parenting, parents strive for unity across homes via rules. So this is where the parents do. They try to create the same rules, support each other. Maybe there's a phone that goes back and forth. They each can take the phone away from the child if the child's misbehaving or misusing the phone. But with parallel parenting, each parent will set their own rules. Now, research does show that children benefit from predictability. If parallel parenting is the only way to create predictability and peace for your children, then a parallel parenting plan may be necessary. So let's talk about how to deal with conflict situations, so high conflict situations with a parallel parenting plan. So the parallel parenting plan example of situations that cause conflict, and then language to use for parallel parenting plans will be discussed. Certain points are common in a parallel parenting plan. So the wording is very detailed and specific. The focus is on the area of conflict, and the purpose for each part is to be useful so that both parents will be helped and conflict will be reduced and there will be greater peace for the family. So we're going to go back to the couple, go back to Mike and Michelle, and look at them in dealing with decision making, schedule changes, and communication problems. And then we'll examine what their solutions are with a parallel parenting plan. So decision making first. So we're going to create an argument, of course, with Mike and Michelle. So Mike and Michelle, they fight and argue about Matt's summer camp every time they talk. Michelle's style is to investigate things on her own and determine which camp would meet Matt's interests the best, and then present that information to her former husband, Mike. Mike, on the other hand, likes to ponder after surfing the web and surfing the various camps' websites' front pages. He cares more about the pictures shown rather than the lists of activities, and how his son's interests will be engaged just by looking at those pictures. He also spends a lot less time in his review in comparison to Michelle. When they were married, it was Michelle that typically did the research and made decisions about where Matt would go to camp over the summer, despite both parents working full-time jobs. Michelle is very frustrated and believes Mike is just avoiding her and avoiding making a decision due to his annoying indecisiveness, and because he did not look up every detail about each camp to Michelle's expectations. Mike is upset because he believes once again that Michelle is trying to control his life and forcing him to make a decision about this summer's camp when he has not had enough time to ponder about it. All right, so a parenting plan solution. Well, when one parent wants a decision to be made on a topic, that parent will have to email or should email the other parent describing the situation needed to be resolved, including possible options, what the parent believes to be the best option, and then provides his or her belief and facts to support it. The other parent should then respond, focusing on their view, focusing on the future, and not about past conflicts. There should also be a time limit to review the proposal as well as to respond to it. So what Michelle would do with parallel parenting plan solutions, so she would send an email to Mike providing the deadline for camps, the links to each camp, prioritizing the camps based on what they offer and Matt's interests, and which one would fit into Matt's summer schedule the best, as well as the travel time needed to get him there. She would close an email with a polite and friendly thank you. The other parent should be offered a week to respond. A no response is communication that the initial spouse is free to make a decision. Certainly there should be some time frame that was agreed upon prior, typically in the parallel parenting plan agreement. For example, the other parent has 72 hours to make a decision or to respond, and if they don't, then the initial parent will go ahead and follow through with the proposal. If the other parent does agree, then you have a response as well. If the other parent disagrees, then that parent has an opportunity to offer another solution or arrange a time to meet and to discuss it later. Certainly, in terms of meeting, this may need to be by phone, by text, on our Family Wizard, in some other manner. So if the parents, though, cannot agree after the rebuttal proposal, then the parents should see a mediator or a parenting coordinator, or go through their lawyers to come up with a solution. So the goal, however, is to avoid the use of their attorneys and the court system to find agreement. And I have to tell you, I have seen many situations where parents go to court to resolve very simple questions and decisions, which is unfortunate. So where maybe a parent will spend, the parents will spend $10,000 or $20,000 on attorney and court fees to determine who's going to pay for private school. So, and they're arguing about money yet spending the same amount or more, or spending a double amount, when they should have just, which it's unfortunate that they cannot just resolve the issue themselves. All right, let's talk about schedule changes. Certainly something that comes up often because, again, schedules are not static, especially when we're talking about with children and working adults. Back to Mike and Michelle. So both Mike and Michelle work very busy full-time jobs. Anytime Mike or Michelle makes a schedule request, the other complains with judgment and criticism that the other's not considering their child's interests, Matt's interests, first, and then complains that their own schedule is impacted unfairly. So the parallel parenting plan solution. So when parent A requires a schedule change, parent A will email the other parent requesting the change. Parent B should only respond with a yes or a no, and they should not require an explanation for why parent A wanted the change. If yes, parent A and B change the schedule. If B says no, then the traveling parent, which is parent A, will not change the schedule and make their own arrangement for someone else to care for the children, or for Matt in this example. Parent A, the traveler, will not ask why the other parent is unable to make the change. In my work as a parenting coordinator, parents want explanations all the time, and then they keep score about the number of times the other did not allow them to change and the number of times that they made concessions and were flexible. And they both do this despite both rather consistently not agreeing to changes with the schedule. So, again, in parallel parenting, parents must commit to following the established plan. Although making arrangements for childcare may be difficult now, making this arrangement is better than getting upset and fighting and creating more conflict. So again, parents have to broker a deal in a business type manner. Let's next talk about communication breakdown and preventing it. Mike and Michelle have trouble relaying information because things get heated quickly. So they rely on Matt and the nanny to pass information between the parents. Mike and Michelle also rely on texts that get misinterpreted. Obviously, much of the information is missed, is not passed, or is misinterpreted, and thus Matt's life is impacted and does not run smoothly. So what's the parallel parenting solution to ensure or mitigate communication breaking down? Well, the parents need to choose a communication method when they need to vary from the regular schedule, when they need to make any changes or pass any information so nothing's lost. And again, not go through the children, the nanny, the dog, any other parties. And parties need to typically use one method or a combination of. So they can use phone, but typically if there's really high conflict, they shouldn't be using the phone. They can use text, email, our family wizard, talking parents, Google Calendars, Google Email, and other email systems. But the point is everything needs to be housed, everything needs to be copied, maintained, so you can refer to it at that instant so communication is clear. The worst part is when they're calling, texting, emailing, and using our family wizard, and nobody really knows what's happening. So you got to slow down, pick a method, and follow the method. The parents will call or text in the event of an emergency. So there's got to be an agreement that if there is an emergency or a significant event, it's okay to call or text. Other than that, the other parent will not intrude in any way on the other parent. The parents will not leave messages with nannies or sitters again. Okay? All conversation needs to be positive, needs to be on topic, and specifically about the children. If you get off track, the conversation needs to immediately end. Okay? It needs to stop. Parents can't just cool down on their own while they're still connecting with each other. Contact will then be picked up the following day or an hour later. Once conflict has begun, again, there needs to be no more communication. Certainly within the hour, sometimes if you're really steeped in high conflict, you may need to take off the day. You may need to say, I'm going to call you tomorrow morning. Somebody needs to end. Both of you need to end the conversation. So if parents can't agree on the change or they can't agree on the decision, then they need to just follow what the regular schedule is or what is already outlined in the order until they seek some other intervention and have some other resolution. Also, you want to consider creating a form or other method with limits to relay information back and forth about the children and limiting communication to 1 to 3 seconds. 1 to 3 sentences. So often you can create some type of form that you relay information, often with young children or when you need to relay information about bottle feeding or baby food. You can create a form that you just pass back and forth to the party so they know when the child went to sleep, when they woke up, when diapers were changed. Or if you're also another example of learning how to communicate better, or another method would be just limiting communications to 3 sentences. And I often recommend this with parents when one party just sends paragraphs and stories, so huge narrations about things that could really take a couple sentences. So I train both parties to send a few sentences back and forth, because often in these situations the one party's sending books of information and then the other party just stops communicating. And we don't want to stop communicating. There still needs to be some relay of information, even in these high conflict situations. For the exercise in section 7, what I want you to do is to determine which items we discussed in parallel parenting plans that you would like to implement within your parenting plan to create greater structure and to reduce conflict, and to determine whether you would benefit from a parallel parenting plan versus a typical co-parenting one.